Hi, and welcome to this edition of The Real Housewives of Drottningholm. Today we're going to talk about Lovisa Ulrika. Lovisa Ulrika was born in Prussia in 1720. Her father was Frederick I, and her brother was Frederick II. Now, Lovisa grew up quite rich. She grew up in a court which was very sophisticated and advanced. She spoke lots of languages, French, German, English, Swedish, and had a fantastic library out here at the Drottningholm Palace. During her reign here at Drottningholm and in Sweden, one of the interesting things that she did is something behind me, and we're looking at the beginning of the cantons. And these are little village houses, and it was supposed to be a little tiny village right near the Chinese pavilion with kind of cottage industry. One of my favorite things that was done here was Ulrika got it in her head that we should have silk in Sweden, and we should try to grow it since China had the corner of the market on silk. So they got the worms, they got the mulberry bushes. They had a lot of trouble growing the mulberry bushes here. Sweden is the wrong climate for lots and lots of different things. What they wound up eventually with was a square piece of fabric. That's enough silk that they got to weave. And it was about this big. It was tiny. But the court scientist said it is extremely fine quality. Now we're at the Chinese pavilion, and this beautiful building was a birthday gift for Lovisa Ulrika when she turned 33 in 1753. She was the Queen of Sweden. She'd married Adolf Fredrik of HOLSTEIN-GOTTORP. And yeah, this is it's a pretty damn good birthday present. Happy birthday, darling. I built you a little palace. Originally, it was a flimsier building, and they surprised her by distracting her all day, and then they brought in everything on a barge and put together the pieces. Quite an undertaking for the time. But it's quite beautiful. They finished it. It took quite a while for them to finish it after she had the initial one that rotted when it rained. And this one is quite lovely as a birthday gift because you can see it's kind of curved, and there's an idea during her time that in the Baroque you would bring the outside in. So they would sit at the windows, open up these French doors, and then they would have plays and other things out here and music. Now, she got paired off with Adolf Fredrik, and yeah, to give a turn of a phrase, he was some low-hanging fruit on the European nobility tree. He was not a catch. He was a whoremonger, he was a glutton, he was notoriously unfaithful to her, and their marriage had been arranged in part by Elizabeth I, the Tsarina of Russia. She had a lot to say in Swedish politics at the time, and had a lot of power in Europe. They had a rather unhappy marriage, and that might be part of the reason why she was unhappy here in Sweden. The other reason she was unhappy is she came from this court that was very rich, very sophisticated, and Sweden was the backwaters. These were a bunch of country bumpkins. She didn't like it. She didn't like Adolf Fredrik's court. What she had to say about him was extremely unflattering. She wrote back in a letter to her family, "The king's or arts and sciences are not to the king's taste. The court painter here is blind. The court fencing master is lame. The dancing master has a limp, and the court musician is deaf." And that's how she summed up culture here in Sweden. Adolf Fredrik was a glutton, and this is how he died. He ate himself to death. Should have paid attention to each one of the 7 deadly sins. He had a meal in about 1771, and it was lobster, caviar, kippers, yuck, also sauerkraut. I don't know why you would have sauerkraut together with caviar and lobster, but he had sauerkraut. Lots of champagne, and then he finished off this meal with 17 rather heavy pastries. There's a sweet bun called a semla here in Sweden, and it's a delicious bun that you fill with almond paste, and then you eat it with hot milk. But imagine 17 of those. His stomach burst, and he died. This left her a widow, and she became Queen Dowager, and her son, Gustav III, became king. Now, when it comes to her being a mom, I'd say she'd give Joan Crawford a good run for her money in terms of Mommie Dearest. She spread rumors that Gustav III was not the father of his son, Gustav IV, who he had together with Sophia Magdalena of Denmark, and part of this might be that he was more interested in men, is one thing that was rumors that was going around. But there was also a really nasty cartoon that was circulating in Sweden at the time about the lineage of Gustav IV. And she was also no peach to Sophia Magdalena. Sophia Magdalena was known as a great beauty of Europe. And she had a tiny waist, absolutely tiny, which was highly in fashion. And her mother-in-law used to come into her bedroom every night and tell her how ugly she was. Talk about having a monster-in-law. Later on, when Lovisa Ulrika could not live here at the palace anymore because she got so in debt, she had to give up the palace. She had a rift with her son, the king, and she was not allowed to take her furniture and the wallpaper with her. People used to take their wallpaper because it was hand-painted, it was very valuable, and they would hang it on hooks. She couldn't bring any of the furnishings, she couldn't bring anything, and she never forgave him for that. The brothers of Gustav, actually, Karl and Frederick Adolf, crawled on the floor at one point, begging their mother to make up with Gustav III. So, that is our story today about Lovisa Ulrika, and I hope you enjoyed it. Thank you for your time, and have a great day.